I know the command line can be really daunting when you first open it up. You just have that black background and white blinking text, but with this video, I'm going to show you every command that you need to know in order to master the terminal. Welcome back to Web Dev Simplified. My name's Kyle, and my job is to simplify the web for you so you can start building your dream project sooner. So if that sounds interesting, make sure you subscribe to the channel for more videos just like this. Now right now I just have the command line open and I'm open on a Linux terminal, so I'm in the Linux operating system, but you can do this in any operating system you want, whether it's going to be Windows or Mac. In Mac the terminal is going to work just fine, and in Windows just make sure you download git bash instead of using the default command prompt, because it's not going to have all the commands we talk about, but otherwise pretty much every command we talk about is going to work in Linux, Windows, and Mac, and I'll talk about any discrepancies as we go. So the very first command that I want to teach you is one that's really important as you're navigating around in the terminal, and that's the pwd command. And this will just tell you what your current working directory is. If you hit enter, when we type this command in, you'll see here that it tells us we're in the /home/Kyle/test folder. And this is really useful because as you're navigating around in the terminal, you don't have any user interface that's graphical to tell you where you are. So using this pwd command, it's a really great way to figure out what folder you're inside of your different file system. And speaking of the folder that you're in, if you actually want to see the contents of the folder, you're going to use a command called ls. Just type out ls, hit enter, and this is going to show you all of the different files and the directories that you have inside of this folder. So in our folder, we have a directory, which is called directory. And in our terminal here, it's showing up as blue to denote that this is a directory. And then we have a file called file.txt, and these are the only two things inside of the folder, inside of home Kyle test. Now, if we want to get additional details on these files, we can type in ls, and then we can add a second property to this of -al. Essentially, anytime that you type out a command, the first thing you type out is going to be the command, so in our case, pdw or ls. And then if you want to modify or augment the command, there's a bunch of different things you can do by adding different flags. And generally flags start with a hyphen, and then you're going to put the rest of the flag. So our flag here is the AL flag, and we're adding that to ls. And when we hit enter, you can see we get a bunch of detailed information about these files. You'll notice we have these two files up here, which are period and ... We're going to come back to those in a little bit. But you also see this directory file and this file.txt that we saw when we first ran ls. And you'll notice we have information about when these files were created, who owns these files, and other things. And on the far left, we had information on the permissions of this file. Now these permissions are incredibly important because they tell you what the user is actually able to do with these different files. So this permission is broken up into essentially 4 different sections. This first dash here is a denotion of what type of file this is. If it's just a dash, it means it's a normal file. So in our case, this is a normal file, so it's just a dash. If it's a directory, you'll see it starts with a D. And as you can see, our directory has that D at the beginning, and same with these directories up here. Now the next 3 sections stand for read, write, and execute access. So R is read, W here is write, and X is execute. And this is the permissions for the actual user that has this file. So in our case, that is Kyle. They have read and write permission on this file.txt, but they can't actually execute it. Now the next 3 categories are for the group, and in our case the group is also named Kyle, so they're the same thing essentially. And you can see we have read, write, execute permissions here, and here we only have read and write permissions. And then finally, the last section here is just for everyone else, everyone that's not the user or within the group that this file is owned by. And as you can see, they only have read permission for this file, or up here you can only do read and execute permission. You don't have that write permission. Now, it's not super important to understand these permissions, but sometimes if you're trying to execute a file, for example, you can run this command and see if you have execute permission on that file to know if you can or cannot execute it. Same thing if you're trying to read or write the file, you can see what the permissions are right here. Now you notice these 2 files or directories up here, this period and period, they don't show up when we run ls normally, and that's because they're hidden files. And if you want to view hidden files with ls, you do ls-a. So we're using the A flag, and that'll make it so that all of the hidden directories and files are also going to show up, as you can see right here. Now you notice this is starting to clutter up my screen quite a bit. We have all these different commands showing up. So what we can do in order to clean this up is just type in the clear command, and that'll clear everything from your screen so you're starting with a fresh blank slate, so that way you don't have to worry about everything getting all cluttered up when you're typing commands. Now the next command I want to talk about is the cd command. And with cd, what you do is you pass it the directory where you want to go into. So this stands for change directory. And then the next thing we pass to it is where we want to go. So if you remember, if we type in ls, we have this directory called directory. So we can type in cd to change directory, and we want to change into that directory folder. And the nice thing about being on the command line is if you start typing something out and hit tab, it'll auto-complete for you. As you can see, this auto-completed to directory, because that's the only thing that started with dir in our list that could be supported. And if we hit enter, we're now inside of that directory folder. And when I type in pwd, you'll notice we're in home Kyle test directory right here. Now, if we wanted to go backwards instead of going forward, so for example, we wanted to go back into that test directory, well, we could type in cd and then put 2 periods. If you navigate into the 2 period directory, that's telling you to go backwards 1 step. So right now we're in this test/directory. We're going to move up back into that test folder by running this command. And if we run it and we type in pwd, you'll see we're now in home Kyle test. So we just moved up 1 directory. And if we run it again and we do pwd, we're going to see that we're in home/Kyle. It'll constantly just move us up and up until there's nowhere else to go. Another really useful command with cd is if you put a hyphen in, this is going to direct you to the previous directory that you were in. So if you remember, previously we were in home Kyle test, and now we're in home Kyle. So if we run cd with the hyphen, it's going to bring us back to where we used to be, which is in home Kyle test. When we run this and hit pwd, you can see it prints out home Kyle test, and it even prints out the directory you're moving into whenever you run that command, just so you know exactly where you are. Let's clear this out real quick since we're back in that test directory. And something else that we can do with cd is just pass it nothing. If we pass nothing at all to cd, what's going to happen is it's going to redirect us back to the home. So if we do pwd, our home is in home/Kyle. And the nice thing about this is it doesn't matter where you are, as long as you type in cd with nothing else, it'll always bring you back to that exact same folder. And one nice thing about cd is we can actually type in a path. So we could come in here and we could say we want to go into the test folder, and then we know there's a directory folder inside of there, so we want to go inside the directory folder too. And now what's going to happen is you can see we've navigated from home/Kyle all the way to home/test or /Kyle/test/directory. So we're able to do as long of a path as we want. And we can even do an absolute path. So you can say we want to go to cd/home/Kyle. And that's going to bring us to home/Kyle. And even though it's not relative to where we are, it's an absolute path since it starts with this slash at the beginning. And if we hit enter and we just do pwd again, you can see it brought us to that exact path. So we can either do a relative path if it doesn't have a slash at the beginning, or an absolute path if it has a slash at the beginning like this. Let's go back into our test folder and clear all of this out. So that cd command is one of the most useful commands because it's going to be essentially how you navigate through the entire file system. ls allows you to view files, and pwd allows you to see where you are, so we can view folders, files, and move around them. The next step is obviously going to be creating these things. So now if we want to create a new folder, all we need to do is type in mkdir. This stands for make directory, so make any folder, and then we just type it the name of the folder that we want to create. In our case, we want to create a folder that's just going to be called new folder. So we're just going to hit enter, click ls, and you can see we now have a folder called new folder. Now if we wanted to create a file instead of a folder, we use the command touch. It's a kind of weird command name in my opinion, but the command touch will allow you to create a brand new file, and we can give it any name we want. We'll just say new file.txt. And now when we do ls again, we have that new folder and we have that new file that we've created. And this is just a blank file, and this is a completely blank folder. If we go into new folder and hit ls, you can see it prints out nothing. There's nothing at all inside of this folder yet. So let's just navigate back to our main directory. Now the next command is going to be what happens if we want to copy a file or a folder. Well, we can use the cp command. This stands for copy. We just type it in the name of the thing we want to copy. For example, we're going to copy new file.txt, and we're going to copy it into the new folder. So we're going to say new folder / new file copy.txt. And what this is going to do is it's going to take this file that it found inside of our current directory, and it's going to copy it into this relative directory right here and give it the name new file copy.txt. If we hit enter and ls, you'll notice nothing changes here, but when we cd into the new folder and hit ls, you'll notice we now have our new file copy right here. We can also do a very similar thing to copy, but instead of copying it, we want to actually move the file. What we could do is just use the mv command. This is going to stand for move, and we can do the same thing. Let's say we want to move our new file copy.txt, and we want to move this file up into the previous directory. So we're just going to do .. and we're going to call it new file copy.txt. We're just going to give it the exact same name. Now, when we ls, you'll notice we now have nothing at all inside of our new folder because we've moved the only file that's in here up 1 directory. So if we go back 1 directory and we look, you can now see we have new file copy.txt. If I just clear that out so we can see at the very top here, you can see we have that file right here. Now we can also rename files by using the exact same move command. Let's say we want to rename file.txt. Well, all we do is say we want to move that file, and we're going to move it to the exact same location, but we're going to give it a brand new name. So instead of calling it file.txt, we're going to say file2.txt. And I called it ttx. We just hit ls here. You'll see that we have file2.ttx. And we can rename that again by just saying move file.file2.ttx, and we want to call it file2.txt. So it's correctly named. And as you can see, there we go. And one nice thing about the terminal, really handy command that you can do, is anytime that you have a command that you typed previously that you want to rerun, all you have to do is use the up and down arrow keys. If you hit up, it's going to give you the previous command. Up again is going to give you the previous command before that. And we can go all the way back a long ways to all of our different commands. This is great if you need to rerun a command and change something, or just rerun a command completely. Using the up and down arrow keys allows you to navigate through those commands super easily. So we've pretty much covered how you can navigate through directories, create files, move files. The only thing left really is how you can actually delete these files and directories. So if you want to remove a file, just type in rm. That stands for remove. And let's say that we want to get rid of our new file copy. We'll say new file copy.txt. Hit enter, and that removed the file for us. When we hit ls, you'll notice that file no longer exists in the list. Now, if you wanted to remove a folder instead, let's say we want to remove this new folder, we would type in rm new folder, and we hit enter, and you notice it's actually not going to work. It says rm cannot remove new folder. It is a directory. If you want to remove a directory, you need to tell it to remove things recursively. So you can say rm-r and then type in new folder. And what this is saying, if we make sure this is -r, it is essentially saying take everything in new folder and delete it, as well as delete the actual folder itself. And this is just a safeguard to make sure you don't accidentally delete folders that are really important. Now we hit enter and we check ls, you'll notice that directory is gone. And if there's things inside of that folder, it would have removed them as well. It removes everything, including the folder itself. So this is actually a pretty dangerous command to run, because if you accidentally run this command at a really high level, you could delete everything inside of your entire computer. So anytime you're messing with rm with the -r flag here, make sure you're really careful that you know exactly what you're deleting, because you could accidentally wipe your entire computer if you're not careful. Now really the last main thing that you need to be able to do with files is be able to edit them, because we can create them, we can move them, we can delete them, but the only left thing to do is to edit them. And that is where the built-in editors into the terminal come in handy. There's quite a few, you could use Vim for example, but the one that we're going to be using is Nano, and I just want to use Nano because I find it a bit easier to use than Vim. Vim has a really high learning curve. So let's say that we want to go into new file.txt. All you do is type in Nano, which is the name of our editor, and then we type in the name or path of the file we want to edit. We hit enter, and it's going to open up the editor. And you'll notice there's nothing in our file currently because it's completely empty. And at the bottom, you'll see there's a bunch of different commands that we can use to be able to move around and do things in our editor. So let's just type something in. We're going to say this is some text in the file. And that's all that we want to type. So what we want to do is obviously exit out of here. And at the very bottom, you'll notice we have this little caret symbol followed by X. That just means hold down Control and then click X, and that allows us to exit. So we're going to hit Control and X. And it's going to say, you know what, you changed some things. Do you want to save these changes? If we click Y, it'll do yes, which in our case we want to do. Otherwise, if we click N, it'll do no. And we can hit Control C just to exit out completely. So we're going to save these. So we're going to type in Y, and it says, where do we want to save these? We want to save them to this file, new file.txt. That's where we want to save them. We don't want to change the file name. So we're just going to hit enter. And there we go, exits it out. And it actually did and created that file for us. So if we just type in here, ls, you'll notice that our new file is still there. And it actually changed the content of it. So if we go nano new file.txt and hit enter, you can see that we have that text inside of here that we can modify further if we want, or we can just hit Control X to exit out completely. Let me just clear this real quick. Now, if you wanted to actually see what's inside of a file, one of the best ways to do that is by using the cat command. If we just type in cat in the name of the file, which we called new file.txt, what's going to happen is it's going to print out all of the text inside of that file. But this cat command actually stands for concatenate. And all it's doing is taking the text inside of here and concatenating it into our terminal. But we can actually concatenate multiple files together. So let's come in here and we're going to take file 2 and we're also going to modify it. We're going to say nano file2.txt. And this is just a test file. That's what the text is inside of here. We're going to leave it as is. So now if we do cat of file2.txt, we get this is just a test file. And if we do cat of our new file, we get this is some text in the file. What I want to do is create a new third file that combines both of these together. So what we could do is we could just say cat of file2, and then we could also put in our new file here. And now it's going to print out the contents of both of those files, as you can see, but I want to put them into a new file. So I'm going to use that same command, but I'm going to use this greater than symbol here. And this is essentially the pipe symbol. It's saying take whatever the output of cat is, which is this right here, and I want you to put it into something else. And we want to put it into, let's just call this file3.txt. So now when I hit ls, you'll notice we have a brand new file3.txt. And if we cat that file3.txt to see what's in it, you're going to notice it has the exact content of the other two files. So we concatenated file2.txt and new file.txt, and we piped it over into file3.txt. So anytime that you see this greater than symbol here, it's essentially saying take the output of one command, which is this left-hand command here, and we want to put that content into whatever the right-hand side is, which in our case is this file3.txt. The interesting thing though is you don't have to use this with just the cat command. For example, we could take ls and we want to print this out and we want to print it into file3.txt. Now, when I cat file3.txt, you're going to notice it gives me the actual output of what running ls would have printed. So it just takes whatever the output of that command is, doesn't matter what it is, and pipes it into the file that we put on the right-hand side. That's what this greater than symbol does. And this is great if you want to override the entire contents of a file, but what if you want to just append to the end of that file instead of overwrite everything? Because right now, when we use that greater than symbol, it overwrites everything in the entire file. So let's do a quick here cat for file3.txt, and you'll notice that this is the content we have inside of here. And there's another command that we can use called echo, and echo just prints whatever you type after it. So we can just say echo hi, and you can see that it prints out the text hi. And let's say we want to add hi to the end of file3.txt. Well, we could say echo hi, and we know that that's going to print out hi. And if we use one greater than symbol like this, what's going to happen is it's going to overwrite everything inside of file3 with hi. But if we use two greater than symbols, what's going to happen is it's going to add this to the end of the file. So now when I type in ls, you'll notice nothing changed with our files, but when we cat our file3.txt, you're going to notice that one line of hi has been added to the end. So you can use echo in combination with these double greater than symbols to add to the end of any file. And the nice thing about these greater than symbols is you can use them with anything. Anything that has an output, you can pipe into the thing on the right and just add it to the end of that file. And echo is just a convenient command that prints out whatever you type to it, so it's really good for adding individual things to the end of a file. Now the next command I want to talk about is a really important one when you're learning how to use the command line, and this is the man command. And the man command, all it does is give you documentation for whatever command you want. So we can just say man ls, and it's going to give us huge documentation that we can scan through here on every single flag that you can pass. So all of these things, -h, -si, all of these are different things that you can pass to this ls command. It tells you exactly what all of them does. It has examples of everything, author. It's literally the full documentation for these commands. And then whenever you're done reading out of this documentation, you just click Q, and that'll exit you out of the documentation. And a really important other key to know is that anytime you're inside of a long running process, if you hit Control C, that'll exit you out of that process. So it's really important to understand how to use Control C to immediately quit out of anything that you're doing in the terminal. So if something's just spinning forever and ever and ever, use Control C to exit out of it. Now the very last command I want to talk about, this one is 100% specific to Linux, and this is how you actually can install and download packages. And this is with apt-get or apt-get. This is the package manager inside of Linux, and you can use it to install, update, and so on different commands. So let's say that I want to install a package, and I want to install FileZilla. This is just an FTP package. I can click enter, and immediately it's saying that I can't do this. It's unable to acquire the information for this, and that's because the permission has been denied. Generally, when you're trying to install or uninstall packages, you're going to need elevated permission. And generally, you don't have that permission, so you need to use the sudo command. What sudo does is it essentially says, make me the root user, and then run this command. So now we can say apt-get install FileZilla, and you'll notice that it's going to ask me for my password. So once I type in the password and hit enter here, it should hopefully install this. I typed in my password incorrectly. Let me just try typing that in again, hit enter, and you'll notice nothing actually shows up on the screen for the password. This is just for security purposes. Let's try this password here. And you'll notice since I failed 3 different times, it didn't actually run the command. We can rerun it again to try to type in the password. Now if I hit enter here, and now that I typed in the password correctly, you can see it started to install everything. It's saying, do I want to continue? I'm just going to type in Y for yes, and it's going to install this entire package. It's going to go through, and once it finishes installing, we're going to be brought back to the command line. So I'm going to come back when that's done. And now that I just finished up, I'll clear out the terminal here, and that completely installed that FileZilla client that we could use. Now the next thing we can do is actually update things. So we can say apt-get, and what we want to do is we want to upgrade that FileZilla. So we type in upgrade, and then we're going to say FileZilla. And again, we're going to get that permission denied. So make sure that you include sudo at the front. And you're going to notice this time I don't actually have to type in my password. And the reason for that is because it saved my password from the last time I typed it in. So as long as you do a bunch of sudo commands back to back, it's only going to ask you for your password one time. And then this is going to run a little bit to update, but if we want to just exit out of it, we can hit Control C like I talked about earlier. And that is going to completely exit out. As you can see, we exited out. It even said that there's an error because of this exiting out. And finally, the last thing we can do is remove things. So I'm going to do sudo apt-get, and this time I want to remove FileZilla. And what this is going to do is just uninstall it, which is exactly what I want because I don't actually want this on my server. It's going to run through, and as soon as it's done, I'll come back. And there we go, that just finished uninstalling. And really the important thing about apt-get is that you can install, upgrade, and remove things, and it works very similar to something like npm if you used that before. It's a package manager. This is just your package manager for your entire operating system. And that right there is every command you need to know to be a terminal whiz. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to check out my other videos linked over here and subscribe to the channel for more videos just like this. Thank you very much for watching and have a good day.